Hi everybody, Dr. Zach here, and I'm excited to be with you again. I've got some more information that I want to continue to share with the numbers that have been coming in on COVID incidences, the cases of COVID that we're seeing. And I really want to take in and talk about the hospitalizations that go with that as well. Before I do, I've got really an interesting story. This is kind of comes from the storyline of they can't make this stuff up. I saw an article the other day in The Onion, which is one of those satirical newspapers, and it said that they've stopped releasing headlines because they can't make up anything that's quite as silly as what's going on in real life. And this is one of those things. This is a county in Oregon, Lincoln County, Oregon, has exempted non-white residents from a new order mandating mask wearing in public in attempt to counter racial profiling. So get this, that a few weeks ago, this county, Lincoln County in Oregon, they mandated the masks for people to wear, which we're seeing kind of happen, across the country, across the state. We've had a lot of talk about masks and the mandates and what does that mean. But it's interesting is that now all of a sudden we've got an exemption for non-white people, and they're saying it's to counter racial profiling. I've got a little bit of confusion that comes with this, is that if we want to reduce racial profiling, but we only have white people that are still wearing masks, it seems like there's a racial profiling that's taken place. So anyway, that's just my own level of confusion and my perception on things at that point. But what's interesting about this as well is that kind of looking at the debate, are masks effective? Are they not effective? And now we've got this, non-white people that are exempt from wearing them. If our belief is that they are effective and they actually do prevent, us contracting COVID-19 and possibly dying from COVID, and yet we're saying that we don't want to profile different people based on their races, but we're going to give them exemption, and they don't have to wear something that we feel is really important, is going to keep them safe. Have we just made a statement saying that we see non-white people as maybe less important because we're no longer mandating this safety precaution? Food for thought. It's just kind of where my mind goes with that. If I were, being racially profiled in such a way and there was some kind of a perception that it could be meaning that I'm less important than other people, I might, because we're all kind of wanting to take offense to something, I might want to take offense to that. So anyway, food for thought. One of those things that's kind of stranger than real life is that if you're a non-white person in a certain place in Oregon, you can choose exemption. As I was joking around in the office this morning, I was talking about how I love Mexican food, and so I could probably identify myself as Mexican because I certainly like Mexican food more than I like Norwegian food. And so if I identify myself as a person of color, a non-white person, can I then have exemption if I live in Oregon? I don't know, food for thought. But I do want to get back to the COVID numbers, because I just saw again this morning that they're talking about just a massive upsurge of cases of COVID that are going on. And here's what I want to bring to our attention is that we're seeing a lot more cases show up because we're testing a lot more people. And there's two different types of tests that they're combining, and one of them is looking at antibodies. So that means, have we been infected by this? Has our body's immune system taken and elicited a response that says, yes, we've been exposed and we've taken care of things so that now we're immune to it. But that means that we have actually gone through the process of dealing with this. And that doesn't tell us what our date of onset is. That just tells us that we've been exposed and that we've recovered. And then there's the PCR, the polymerase chain reaction, which is basically looking to see if we currently have an infection that's going on. That tells us if we've got stuff that's going on right now. Unfortunately, the data is combining both of those. So what we're seeing is a combination of more people being tested. We don't know if they're currently dealing with COVID or if they've just been exposed in the past, and now we're just taking them through the testing process. So what we see with that is the numbers are going up. I've got a couple of graphs here that talk about what that looks like. And so if you take a look at the bar graph here, that actually is telling us the number of tests that are being done, where we see overall cases are actually in a decline, because as we're testing more and more people, we're getting a lot more tests, we might see a smaller percentage of those people testing positive, but still overall numbers continue to grow. So what I want to pay attention to is okay, if we're getting more people that are testing positive, are we having more people that are actually sick? Are we putting a greater load on the hospitals? Because the bottom line is that with any kind of infectious situation that comes along, we have this bell curve, right? You've heard all of this stuff about flattening the curve. Really, we want to get past the curve, because if curve goes like this would be a good place to be on the downside where everything is getting better. Which means, guess what? We have to get through this part, which is getting everybody to where they've had some exposure and their body's had a chance to create some immunity to it. And so we want to kind of see this thing going and end up on this side. So with that is we would expect that even though we're testing more people, we're seeing more people that have tested positive, we would see those numbers show an increase. We'd expect less sick people, less hospitalizations. Now I know that there are some certain areas. I know that I saw Houston this morning where they said that there was actually an uptick of people in the hospitals. But if we take a look at the United States across the board, see if you guys can see this. This is basically looking at the numbers of hospitalizations. And so as we go through period of time, we see that as we are now, as of June 13th, where this ends, is we see that everything is on the decrease. The different colors have to do with the different age groups. So we see a pretty profound decrease to where when we were at our maximum load, we're much, much lower than where we were now. Looking at things specifically in Colorado, we see a similar thing where we are now is we're getting close to zero. We don't have a whole lot of COVID hospital beds that are currently being occupied. So even though we may see, if you look in the paper, if you look in the news, says, oh, Boulder County has this many new cases, or Larimer County, Weld County, guess what? Our hospital beds are remaining relatively empty, which means that we're not dying from this stuff at a rapid rate. So again, to put things back in perspective, COVID is bad, COVID is infectious, COVID is spread, lots of people have been exposed. A small, in fact, a fraction of the percentage of people they expected to die from COVID have died. I talked about the overall numbers of deaths that we've seen so far in the United States, and it's 5% more than we would have expected in a non-COVID year. So with that is that every life matters, every death is a tragedy, but we're not seeing a massive pandemic like we've been told. And even though the news is saying, gosh, we got all these cases that are showing up, we've got this second wave that's taking place, the reality is that we're actually seeing people, and we don't know what date their onset was, what date that they actually were dealing with COVID stuff, but we're seeing more people are testing positive, which means we're getting further down that curve. So I want you to take that as good news. We want to get to this point over here. Part of the media and the concern they have with this is that if you look at their major, the people that pay for them to do what they do, it's going to be a lot of it is pharmaceutical dollars that come in. And they want to keep our fear at a high level, because then we're going to be dependent upon a vaccine to save us from this thing. Because guess what? If we're already down here and that we see this thing has already kind of run its course and we're no longer afraid of COVID-19, all of a sudden there's not a great market for their vaccines, which could cost them at this point with what they're investing and what they're hoping. It could be in terms of hundreds of billions of dollars when you're looking at global scale. So with that said, good news, we're getting in the right direction. We're not going to need the vaccine. Everything is moving the right way, and just continue to live your life in a healthy way, live your life in a happy way, and continue to share the truth with people that you know. So share this with the people that need to hear it. And until next time, this is Dr. Zach.